I'm Nicole Jones, and you are listening to Mediocre to Masterful. This podcast helps you master your goals, activate your plans, and manifest your purpose. Can you all believe we're in April 2019? Oh my gosh, this year is flying by, and I hope that you are actively pursuing your goals and your mission and your purpose in life. And I really hope that this podcast has been able to help you along the way. Within April, this is considered Financial Literacy Month. I have the pleasure of having Joanna Jane on the show for this month, and this is going to be different. This is going to be a two-part episode. So right now, I'll introduce you to part one. Stay tuned for next week when we introduce part two of Getting to the Guap. I have with me Joanna Jane of JB Enterprises, an economic change agent. She has combined experience in social work and has paired that with her passion for financial education. As a licensed financial coach, she specializes in services for small business owners and middle-income families to create financial plans of purpose. Welcome, Joanna.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you on. It's so good to chat with you again.
Yes, thank you. It always feels a little weird when I hear my bio. Is that me?
Yes, that is you. You are that great.
Yeah.
But today's topic is about getting to the guap, getting to the money. And I had the honor of meeting with Joanna at the Black Girls Do Invest tour here in Atlanta. And it was just a powerful conversation, a great panel. And I'm so glad I, was able to, get in touch with you after that meeting and talk more to have you on the show.
Yes, absolutely. That was a great event. Brown Girls Do Invest. The founder, Bahia Shabazz, she had a vision where she really wanted to make sure that women were being properly educated when it comes to the importance of investing. We have a investment gender gap where we don't see as many women investing in the market as they should, and our lives are very different compared to men. One, women get paid less than men, same job, same degree, but we only get about 75 or 85 cents to a man's dollar, and when you then put that in the category of brown women, it's even less. Yeah. So we have to factor the time that we decide to take off from work to maybe spend time with the baby, or maybe if we decide to be the caregivers of our parents. Women typically are those people that take on those roles first than men. So she really wanted to make sure that women were properly educated to know how they can go about saving and investing in different areas of their life appropriately so they can have a life of purpose. And I was just really honored to be a part of the organization and being a part of the tour.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was really amazing. Even those statistics, like as you guys were sharing that information, a lot of eyes got wide. A lot of people didn't know that, or you saw a lot of head nods in the room because they were like, I know it because I see it in my paycheck. Like they could feel the effects of, the disparity when it comes to income. It was just an amazing conversation. And it was just, first, when you just get a room full of women together, it's already powerful. Like any discussions that you get with a room full of women, it's going to be powerful. But then to add on top of that, and it be a room full of minority women talking about stocks and real estate in a way that it was just magical. It was really just magical.
Oh my goodness. It sure was. And just imagine what our view was, right? We had a full weekend. We had 3 sold out events. Come on, Atlanta. Yes.
Right?
We had 3 sold out events. And to look at the audience of a sea of melanin, just all different shit. I said, oh my goodness. We got some fine women. Come on now. This makes a lot of sense. Now I understand why some things happen the way they happen.
Right?
Brown women, we are beautiful. So it was great to actually see how, people were intentional about where they wanted to be Friday and Saturday. Having notepads out, taking down notes, and asking intentional questions. And I always say, you'll hear me say a lot today, the word intentional, because this year my motto is, you have to be in intentional spaces, making intentional moves for intentional results. And it all comes with execution. So, to see that women were really taking it seriously, and they were asking questions, the follow-up, has been amazing. Atlanta is really having me think about turning back my Georgia license, which that looks like that's going to be happening next month anyway. So, so I know there's a sea of people that want to work with me, and I look forward to working with them. And it was just really amazing, really, really amazing. And it goes to tell you that if we only just go for the knowledge, if we seek the knowledge, our lives can change. Change doesn't happen without change.
Yes.
If we really make sure that we are seeking the knowledge, because the Bible says that we die from the lack of that. So think about the stress that we take on, the burdens that we take on, the feeling of just being unnecessarily overwhelmed.
Yes.
Only because we lack the knowledge. So if you chase the knowledge, your life can actually change. And those women came all weekend chasing the knowledge to learn how to properly invest in themselves in terms of having a wealth mindset. They came to also learn how to invest in, preparing for their retirement, learning about stocks and learning about real estate. And the funny thing is, Nicole, as you can hear, I'm so passionate about this.
I love it.
We only scratched the surface.
Yeah.
We didn't really get as deep as we wanted to get.
Nope.
That was our reflection. Like, we just scratched the surface a little bit.
Yep.
Just imagine when we come back to the Atlanta area, we're going to really tear it up.
Oh my God. It's going to be, because we even went overtime. And it was like, man, there's so much more we could share. That was just a magical event. I know what was a good point that you mentioned, like these women came in with intention and that they were serious about, the information that they wanted to learn and gather from this experience. That was true because they came in Atlanta traffic to kick off on a Friday night.
Yes, I had a taste of some Atlanta traffic while I was there, so I could just imagine where they were coming from in different areas.
Yeah. But no, it was just an powerful event. I'm so glad I got to meet you there, and I'd love to share more about your story and how we can bring that same energy, that same concept that we talked about in that room into this podcast and share with listeners, because it was just a powerful message. And I want you to be able to share what you talked about. But before we do that, can you tell us more about JB Enterprises?
JB Enterprises, there's a story. So you'll realize that as we chat today, and for all the listeners out there, that I am not big on promoting the timeline. I am big on being real. So JB Enterprises did not just come up overnight, okay? There was some junk that happened, and now looking back, I could say, ooh, that was God using me, using some situations, using my enemies. I said, okay, this is going to work. Going through it, at the moment, it did not feel that way. I felt like I was just being poked and pulled. And so, long story short, some people hearing this podcast might originally have known me as the CF coach, the career and financial coach, when I first decided to, really put myself out there and allow people to know the work that I've been doing over the years. That was the title that I carried, because I was not just, working in the financial industry. I was also doing career development. So there was a number of things that I was doing in that area. Unfortunately, I had some challenges with one of the firms that I was working with, and it caused an issue where I needed to, stop selling my book. I couldn't do certain events. So I actually took a hiatus in terms of, really pushing my brand and things like that for a while.
Yeah.
And it hurt a lot. However, while I was doing that, there were other things that I was still working on. And I said, I'll just continue working in silence. And, I worked on my spiritual health and got my mind together, and really just allow God to really get closer to me. I should say me getting closer to him, so I can be able to really hear what is the next move. How do you want this to look? Mm-hmm. And with several things that were birthed during that time of being quiet, I tell people, don't be afraid to sit on that island by yourself, because that's where
Yeah.
some work gets done.
Yep.
JB Enterprises came about because what was revealed to me, I am not just career development. I am not just a financial coach. I am not just a business consultant. I am not just a woman that invests in real estate. I am all of those things, including, a mom and a daughter, and a woman that has a strong story, has pit moments, has, mountain moments. And for the things that he has in store for me in the future, it's an enterprise, sweetheart. It is not just one thing. I cannot put myself in the box, because during that difficult time, I still had women that would come up to me, or primarily women, but I would just say people, period, that would ask me to come and do motivational speaking events. They would ask me to do some financial workshops, and then some of them wanted me to come and sit on the panel and speak about faith and finance. And then I still had my financial literacy program, which we also incorporated with career development. So it was too much where I could not just put myself in a box, and that's where JB Enterprises came about, because I am all of those things. And when you have realized that God has called you for greater, whether you like it or not, you have to be careful of the words that you use and the titles that you place on yourself, because you could be limiting your blessing.
You better change the topic of this discussion. But no,
yes.
that
JB
is.
Enterprises came about from some pain and some things happening, and me having to walk away from 2 six-figure opportunities. Some people thought I was crazy, and I thought I was crazy, but I just knew that it didn't match the vision for what God was showing me. And what was actually happening was I was graduating. We have to be very careful, Nicole, when we feel like we've hit a ceiling in life, and we know that we've tried everything, we've done everything, and it's still not working. We have to be careful that we don't place ourselves in that area of, oh, I'm a quitter. I'm just going to quit. I can't quit. When really, God is actually graduating you to the next level. How many times are you going to stay a senior? You know the classes, you know the school, you know everybody. It's time for you to graduate. And when I got that full understanding, that's when everything changed.
I love that.
So I graduated into JB Enterprises.
I love that. I like that term too. You graduated. I was going to say, in those moments where it felt like, everything was just crumbling down, that was actually that blessing pushing you forward, which you used a better term, which was graduating. So I like that. But no, thank you for sharing that story and your journey, and how this came about, and how you got into the financial service industry. How do you use your experience as a social worker in the area of financial services?
Believe it or not, it is the same skill. So when I started out in the counseling, clinical counseling, social work industry, I was working with families of those that had children of special needs. I was working in the ER, dealing with patients that were coming in with attempts of suicide or even worse. And then I also worked with families that were, they were facing challenges, just trying to figure out where they can get discharged from a med-surg unit to an appropriate facility for rehab. But all of those things still connected back to money, whether it was the mom with an autistic child that didn't have the funds for the right services to be able to see their child get the best support for their development, or it was that person that came to the hospital trying to figure out the next step, but their funds were limited. So it all came back to money, but the skills in terms of how I worked with them, how I looked at who they were in the moment, listened to their challenges, listened to some of their beliefs, it's all pretty much the same. So ultimately, the focus of going into the financial industry, I use the same skills. I do not sit with people and try to just try to create a sale. That's not it. I'm big on letting me get to know you, because if we're able to do a proper assessment and I can hear you, I can hear what is most important to you, I'm not going to pose my norms on you. And that's what a lot of times we find in the more rigid financial industry is someone's just coming in and they want to just give you insurance, or they just want to, do a regular investment. But if you don't listen to that person's why, if you're not willing to they're trying to go in the future, then you miss out on a relationship. And soon from now, as soon as you walk out that person's house or they leave your office, that whole plan that you put in place, the insurance, the investment plan, all that stuff, it's going to stop. It's very limited. I've seen it happen, several times. So I use a lot of the same clinical counseling skills, solution-focused, oriented skills when I am working with my clients. And I can say, especially with, with brown families, it's very important because we have a different relationship with money than Caucasian families.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We are now seeing more of the open conversation and that comfortability. I still think we have a ways to go, but we're more so seeing it now. And I think it has to do with a lot of us being more open-minded to going back. See, we have to be careful. I'm not saying this is something new, but going back to focusing on being entrepreneurs, because we were always people that owned land and were in control, but I'm not going to go into that. So the fact that we are now going back to the focus of being entrepreneurs, I think that we're now being more open to talk about money. So now that we're talking about it, there's a process to that. And every advisor can't necessarily be as successful working with brown families, because you have to be able to connect to them. You have to be able to understand what's taking place in that moment when you are telling them to do something, or the way that they're going to get to their desired result. They're going to have to walk away from the beliefs that were placed on them as a child that they had nothing to do with.
Yep.
They have to walk away from the systematic things that were placed on them as a child. They have to walk away from a lot of that. And that's not always easy, because now they don't have anybody within their family a lot of times that they can relate to.
Yep. Yep.
They are actually the blueprint that the ones after them will be able to look up to, but they often don't necessarily have the person in front of them. And that's not everybody. Everybody's household is different, but there's a large number of us that we are the first. So when we decide to invest and cut back on purses and bags and frivolous trips that we know that we really can't afford, sometimes friends can't relate, sometimes family can't relate. So then your circles start changing, and people wonder, are you a sellout? Like, now you're not hanging out with us anymore? And it's not necessarily that, but again, I've graduated to a new way of life, and I need to be around people that can be able to relate to me, and I can feel valued for some of the decisions that I'm making, because I'm looking for something greater, because I feel that God is calling me to something greater. The Bible says that you need to leave an inheritance for your children's children. So that means the way I operate and the way I move has to be different from what the people around me are doing if they're not on the same page.
I think your role previously as a social worker and then finding your way into finance was just God sent, because it is so critical, especially like you mentioned, for brown families who are in some cases first generation wealth, and they're trying to build it, and they don't really have an example set from their family. It's so critical to have those social skills and to be able to break down those barriers. And going back to what you mentioned earlier about, the tour, where all those women in there were there to seek knowledge. They were there to gain something more that they had not seen within their own environment, or they've heard of, and they might have went to a financial advisor who just tried to sell them something and they didn't really trust that process. But having those skills to be able to say, let's have a conversation and let's talk about where you are in your finances. How do you feel when you talk about finances? What good examples do you have about, financial education and financial services to better yourself? So again, it was just meant for you to be in this particular role, because those are the
and I don't take
real
it for
situations.
Granted at all.
Yeah.
I know it was nothing but God that called me into this, because I've had so many stories. I mean, I've sat with women that have said to me, well, most of my family are from the project. Or, all my whole life, my mom, we grew up on Section 8.
Yep.
So if you basically only know your rent to be $400 Well, sweetheart, that's not the reality of the world.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking to be, a professional and you have a significant salary, or you're looking to be an entrepreneur, there are some things that you have to have more of a reality on.
Mm-hmm.
So I often wonder what are some of the programs, how they offer support and how they offer transitional skills for some of the people that are receiving these services. And I don't know a lot to be able to fully speak on it, but I do believe that we do a disservice to families that consistently receive those type of supports.
Yes.
Not saying that they don't deserve them in their time of crisis, but we do need to be better with transitioning families, whether that be them attending programs with, budgeting and financial literacy concepts and financial planning, as well as sustainability. Once they transition out, what are we providing to them so they can maintain, at least, for a 2-year time span? I'm not saying that you have to hold everybody's hand, forever. That's not the case, but I think that we do a disservice to staying in those type of programs forever.
That's a great point. I never have really thought of, because I'm not really in the quote unquote financial industry, I never really thought about it that way, but that's a great point, that it's that transition period. It's that sustainability process that needs to be a little bit more strengthened, because everybody knows somebody that's still on Section 8 or that's still receiving food stamps or, just different assisted financial services. It's just, in some cases you want to shake them, like, you could just invest, you could do this, you could do this. Like, you don't have to be on that forever. Yes, in the crisis, it is useful. You lost your job, you need unemployment, all that's great. And it's, for those specific purposes, but it should not be the end all be all. There are other options and opportunities out there. And it's just, it comes from, the lack of knowledge, or like you mentioned, there's no real transition. Like the system, like people say, the system tries to keep them in that particular predicament. I just really want for us to have more.
Right. Right. And I remember that experience personally, because I had Haley when I had Haley at 20. I still had a year left in college. So when I came home, first year out of school, salary wasn't necessarily great. So I was able to receive CCIS, which, for those that don't know, that's the subsidy that you receive for childcare. And I want to say maybe within 6-8 months, I decided to another department open where it allowed me to, increase my income, because I was able to be a salary employee, as well as picking up some additional hours, providing one-on-one support for a child with special needs. And the very first time that it was reported, there was no transition. It was up, CCIS cut. I'm like, whoa.
Wow.
I didn't get a chance to save,
Wow.
So, again, I think that a lot of our systems need to be revised as well. We do need to provide people with some transition time, so that way they can be able to properly prepare. For me, I never went back. I just said, I'm going to grind it out. I'll continue working 2 jobs, and I'll figure it out. And, overall, things have worked out. We're blessed. We haven't missed a meal. We still have a roof over our head. But that transition was tough.
Like what you hear? Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter at mediocre-to-masterful.com for more tips and resources to help you reach your goals. And you can also follow us on Instagram at mediocre-to-masterful. There's something that you mentioned, and it kind of plays into what we're talking about, and being able to become educated with money, or you've never actually seen examples of somebody balancing a checkbook in the household, or, just different scenarios and based on your environment. But there's something at the tour that you mentioned where you said, we have to build a relationship with our finances. And that just hit me to my core, because I was like, yes, that is so true. Because I've thought that for myself. And I would love for you to explain that a little bit further, because I definitely think it plays into how people can see better results when it comes to money management.
Yes, absolutely. And for those that are listening, again, this is Joanna Jane of JP Enterprises, and you will hear a lot of what I talk about when it comes to finances is also faith-based, because I do believe there is a strong relationship between, your faith and your money.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean, Nicole, when I say that is God is the source. Money is a resource. It allows us to be able to purchase goods and services to meet the needs, whether we are talking about food, transportation, paying for school, all of those things. We are the person that ultimately has the control of how we decide to use this resource that has been given to us. So we have to create a plan of how am I going to use this resource to be able to get to the result that I desire, or that the result of the vision that God has shown me. You have to create a plan for that money. If you do not, it will do its own thing like a disobedient child, like I said at the event. Mm-hmm. So your relationship with money has to be different, because now if I plan and I say, okay, I'm taking 20% or 15% of my savings to be able to purchase a home that my desire is for this to now produce an income that will then pay for my daughter's school, saving becomes different. It doesn't become a burden. You're not just saving to save. What are we saving for? For how long are we looking for this portion to go towards the down payment for the house? You have to be very specific with it. And it also needs to be, somewhat attainable and realistic. We can't be, we can't talk about, being a millionaire overnight. That's not the case. And we also want to make sure that we're not taking on what we see on social media and what we see on the television, because everybody doesn't necessarily, desire to have a 8-bedroom home and, 5 cars and all these other things. It's what has been shown to you by God in terms of the vision that you're working towards. How are you going to use this resource to be able to fulfill this? And so when you create a plan for your money, you start to operate differently towards it. You also become dedicated to the plan, whether that means that you decided to pick up extra hours at work, or you decided to create an additional product of your brand, so that way you can be able to increase the money, so you can then, connect that to the thing that's going to help you birth that vision. It has to be a plan. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. And I like how you start off with, a lot of the teachings that you share also incorporate faith. And so finance and faith. I think that was good because you mentioned, you need to be specific and realistic with the financial goals that you want to achieve. That also goes to, when you are having a conversation with God, you are specific with your prayers as your as your leading source. Why wouldn't you do that with the resources as well? Be specific and realistic with what you want to achieve.
Right, absolutely. So the things that I do personally that I'll share, I write my affirmations out daily. One of my great sister friends, her name is Elaine Johnson. She has a planner called Plan, Pray Planner. She's a plan, pray planner. And I use it daily, and I write out, what my affirmations are. I write out what I'm thankful for. And then what I have in my master bedroom, there's like this little nook area that really allows me to check in. It almost forces me to check in, I should say. It forces me to check in with all of my goals before I walk out of the bedroom. So I will recite a lot of the affirmations that I write. Some of the major ones I'll hit on the wall. And you have to say them.
Yep.
And mean them. Close your eyes when you say it. Envision it. Allow yourself to really connect with that. So I will write that, LPI Financial Literacy, which is my program that I have for students in high school. I will say LPI Financial Literacy will receive $500,000 in donations. We will. By this time. And now, when I have to put out money for fundraising, or we need to start saving more towards fundraising, now it starts to feel differently. And one of the statements that I say that is very big for me is that money comes to me frequently and easily to fill God's purpose and the desires of my heart.
Oh, wow.
And I say it every single day. So part of the reason why I say that is because you have to leave room for what God is going to do in your life with your money. Mm-hmm. You have to leave room for what God is going to do in your life towards your money. Because if I am going to be fulfilling his purpose,
yep,
then I have to be okay when sometimes in terms of business, I may have to put out a little bit more than I expected.
yes,
Because it's not for
yes,
my will, it's for his will. But I gave him something to work with. Why? Because I was saving along the way.
yep,
A little bit by little bit, a little bit by little bit. So I gave him something to work with. So part of the issue that we see when sometimes people feel that they have been doing things for a period of time and they feel like they're not being successful, or they feel like, oh, I went right back in and I took this out and I don't think God really hurt me. Well, did you give him something to work with? Were you consistent? Because however you operate on level one, positive or negative, it's the same that you will operate on the second level. And if you haven't shown yourself approved, he's not going to bless that.
Woo! Don't show yourself approved. I love that.
Yes. You know, so we have to think about that when we're talking about creating a plan for our money. And when you do that, let me tell you, over time, because it doesn't happen overnight, but over time, you will start to be able to say, no, I can't attend easier. Or you would just be able to prioritize things differently. You will look at things in a new light and be okay with it.
So I like what you said about saving, and make sure you leave room for your resource, which is God, to be able to bless you with different things when it comes to your finances, and being specific about what it is that you're saving for. But I also want to touch on sowing. And what I mean by sowing is tithing. Like, I feel like that plays a huge part in financial freedom as well. Like, you will start to witness and recognize that greater things are happening for you because of that, the sowing of the seed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't even think that it's mine. To be quite honest with you, I don't. So I operate by giving my 10%. And for some people that may not necessarily, be a believer in Jesus Christ, or you may not be, maybe you don't have necessarily the strongest, relationship with God, no matter what denomination or faith, that you follow. I can't tell you one financial book that I've read or advisor or any type of leader that I've heard that said, don't provide a donation. It's in everything. Being charitable, giving is very important. It's a part of everything. You have to give to receive. But now when we make it more specific to your relationship with God, you have to ultimately know where it came from, and you have to be able to give. See, part of it is not to covet money. This is not about loving money. Because again, God is the source. Money is a resource that we have to be able to do the things within the land to birth the vision that he gave to us. And we have to remember that. So when it's time to give your 10%, you're giving something that was really given to you. It's not yours. You are giving something that wasn't yours. So you are showing that you are not loving this resource. My love is for God, because he opened the door for that contract. He opened the door for that job. He opened the door for that speaking engagement. So I need to show him my love is for you, God, not for this resource right here in the land. So I'm going to give my 10%. Now, this is something that I can tell you I learned in October of 2018, attending the Woman Thou Art Least Masterclass conference. It was a game changer, Nicole, for me, business-wise and spiritually. And the way that Bishop Jakes, who I look at as one of my spiritual fathers, the way that he explained tithing and your relationship with money, it really, really hit home. So what he really explained I think it was the last day of our conference, he said, what faith is in the spirit is money in the natural. We use money to buy goods and services. The only other way that we're going to get these goods and services is if we steal, and we know that we get locked up for that type of stuff. So we don't want to rob anybody, right?
Correct.
You pause, you kind of scare me, right? So the same thing when we think about faith. So if money is somewhat equivalent to faith in the spirit, how can we then ask God for something and try to access God with no faith? That we don't believe in him, that we don't believe that he can do it, that we don't believe that we are, that we are more than a conqueror, that we don't believe that we are the head and not the tail. If we don't believe those things, how can we have the nerve to ask him for anything? So when you then make the sacrifice in the natural, you actually provide access in the spiritual. Oh my goodness! Let me tell you, I said I got it. I really got it now. So I don't tremble when I start to feel that God is asking me or directing me really to make a sacrificial offering. Because I know what I do in the natural, he's going to give it 10 times to me in the spiritual. And I've seen it happen.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So we have to so I encourage people that have a relationship with God, because I don't ever force my faith on anyone. But if you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you, I made a commitment to God, and I said, on every mic, I said, God, if you crack open the sky of financial abundance, you know what I need. You know what I have to do. You know the things that you have shown me. I promise on every mic, on every stage, I will declare your word. So I make sure I let people know. No, I might have said that to you when you first asked me.
You sure did. You sure did.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I definitely will talk about God, Jesus. I might say amen. As long as you are okay with that, I will come on your show. So, I'm joking here, but it's very serious to me, because I know that these opportunities do not come because, I'm that great. I've seen opportunities come that I'm not even qualified for. But again, it's because of what I'm doing in the natural, being obedient, not perfect. That word doesn't exist, but being obedient and having faith and tithing, it does something in the spirit that opens up more for me. So now I'm able to have a better spirit of discernment. I'm able to hear him clearly. So I encourage people to tithe. You have a business, you and your business partner, or maybe you're by yourself, make sure that you tithe from your business. Because just imagine what he will do for your business if you tithe from it. Tithe from your income. What will he do for your family if you start tithing from your personal income? So it should be the same, and I encourage people to truly do that. And again, in being charitable, because you're then given to an organization, because most religious institutions, I should say all religious institutions, are 501c3 status. So now you get your tax write-off. That's why they encourage people, whether you are a believer or you have faith or you believe in God or not, you should donate to charitable organizations. You should donate to a 501c3. It plays a benefit, in your taxes and all these other things. So I think that you can't go wrong with sowing in the spirit at all.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I know once I actually started doing my actual 10%, just it seemed like the whole energy, my whole bank account changed. Because I was being more obedient. Like I would tithe, used to be one of those people that tithe here and there, a couple bucks here, a couple dollars there. But I had to be consistent. I had to be obedient, and I had to be like, okay, let me, let go of this mentality. And I spoke about this on a previous episode where my goal, my continued goal is to release the spirit of poverty, which I feel like still is always a work in progress, because if you grew up in an environment that didn't necessarily see people rising financially, you were trying to learn along the way, and I knew I had to release certain things and certain mentalities, and one of the things I did was being more obedient with tithing, and immediately I started to see things shift. Immediately I saw more blessings start to pour in. And then sewing into people a lot more often, just because, or if they were in need, or, contributing and donating to nonprofit organizations, because I believed in it, or I felt something on my heart to like contribute to that particular organization. And it has always come back, if not the same amount, more over time.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Every
Absolutely.
time.
You are every time.
I appreciate you sharing that information, and that was not one of my original questions, so I'm glad that kind of weaved itself in there because it's important. And I think that is a part of, if you are someone trying to see more money in your bank account and actually get to the guap, it's more than just, going to a workshop and then, hearing some information. You have to put practice behind it. You have to be knowledgeable. You have to seek the knowledge. You have to go to different opportunities within your community or outside of your community to learn about, okay, how can I get out of this financial situation because I am stressed. I can't live another day with a withdrawn account. You have to, like you said earlier, leave room to save within the money that you have. It's going to be hard. It's probably already hard in a struggle, but if you remain obedient and consistent with doing that, it'll work out for you.
I totally agree. One of the things I want to make sure that we are very clear on, because what I don't want anybody to do is hear this podcast and think that Joanna Jane said, if I start tithing and I just give to charity, money's going to come. That's not what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. What we are saying is you need to make sure that you are clear about the plan, clear about your vision, clear about the value of your life. What is it that you want at the end? When you figure that out, now you can create a plan for your money. Because what we're not chasing is money. What we're chasing and creating is value and vision. Because when you get that clear, money or having an abundance of it is just a result of that.
Correct.
But the only reason why that you're looking to pick up that extra job is just to buy another bag or buy another thing to look nice when you go out and so forth, and you're just chasing money for things, materialistic things, you're not going to really understand, what Nicole and I are talking about. So we're talking about vision and value and finding a plan for your money through that.
Thank you for clarifying that, Joanna. I think you have given us so much information. And do you have any final words on how people can connect with you?
Oh, yes. So as we are in Financial Literacy Month, use this time to gain knowledge. Use this time this month to go to an investment group that you never went to before. Buy that investment book or that budgeting book that you've never read before. Switch it up, what you're doing. Switch it up. And really take the time to invest in your wealth mindset this month. I encourage you to do that. There are a lot of things out here that you can invest in, like I said, from real estate to individual stocks, mutual funds, all types of things that you can invest in. But if you don't have a wealth mindset, those behaviors will be short-lived. So I encourage you to get into some environments that are going to be able to pour into you, strengthen you, connect with some people that you can start sharing some of your dreams with, and really make sure that you do that in an intentional way. Remember, intentional rules bring intentional results. So you want to make sure that you're taking this time this month to change what you were doing before in your financial behaviors so you can be able to see a change in your financial results as the months are to come. So that's what I wanted to share with everyone. You can follow me on JB Enterprises on Instagram. That's J_B_Enterprises with an S on Instagram, as well as on Twitter. And you can find me on Facebook as Joanna Jane.
Awesome. Well, Joanna, I greatly appreciate you being on today and sharing this information. And I know I took some notes myself because I need to always improve in my financial wheelhouse. But I appreciate you being here and just sharing all this knowledge. And I know someone was either able to gather some information, whether it's for themselves or now their child, on how to build wealth within the family and have that circulate. And how that, have that remain in the family and passed down to generations. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Thank you for attending Brown Girls Do Invest. And I can't leave here without saying, make sure that you follow Brown Girls Who Invest. We have about 4 more cities that we'll be visiting this year. We're already planning for next year. If there's a place that you want us to come to, tag us.
Thank you for sharing that information. If you are in the city that Brown Girls Do Invest is heading to next, be sure to check it out. You will not be disappointed. If you can go to one event or all the events, attend, and you will definitely come out with new information, new knowledge, and energized and empowered by all the women in the room.
We'll actually be in Chicago. So Chicago, June the 8th is where we'll be next.
Awesome.
A windy city, here we come.
I know, right? Hopefully it's not too windy in June, but that'd be awesome. But yes, Joanna, thank you again. I appreciate you being on the show, and I'm sure someone will be moved and motivated today after hearing this episode.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and I look forward to the next one in the future.